And we're live, broadcasting live from historic Founders Park in Ocean Grove, New Jersey, on the Jersey Shore. Thank you so much for joining us in Music Matters 2020. I'm your host, Jason Tramm, and thank you so much for being a part of our unique podcast community, where we delve into the issues and the challenges of 2020 as seen through the eyes of distinguished artists in the performing arts field. Today, we have a wonderful guest for you. We have Jace Saplan from Hawaii, and we're so delighted he could join us. He is the Director of Choral Activities at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And we're delighted he could join us today. And remember to subscribe to us below and hit that bell icon for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. Please like our videos and subscribe to us and help us to grow our community. And remember to chat in the chat feature, and you can ask questions of our guests. And we love it when our members join in the conversation. It just makes the conversation more interesting. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we're delighted that you can be here. Welcome, Jace Saplan.
Aloha, Jason. How are you?
It's a wonderful day, and I'm so glad we can have you on the show. So how are things in Hawaii right now?
It is a beautiful summer day. Things have cooled down from most recent heat wave. So we're back firmly settled in the 80s, and it's, trade winds are here, and not a lot to complain about in terms of weather.
Well, Hawaii, I was there last year, and it was life-changing to just be a part of the scenery and the people, and it made such an impression on my heart, and somewhere I can't wait to come back to in the future. So it is stunning, and thank you so much. And so tell us what's going on musically on the island these days.
So I think in Hawaii, we had to make a recent shift rapidly these past couple of months. We had one of the lowest COVID-19 cases of spread in the country. So there were moments of pocket performances by quartets from the Hawaii Symphony. There were a lot of choral quartets and octets that were singing outside with their masks on. And unfortunately, in the past 2 or 3 weeks, there was quite a rapid spread in COVID-19. So we've been kind of undergoing a very updated city shutdown here in Honolulu. And a lot of us are beginning to transition um, online and figuring out what our seasons and what our semesters and what our quarters look like on Zoom and other types of platforms.
Yeah, we've. I know New York went through that horrific wave of disease of COVID in the fall, and it was in the spring, and it was just so devastating, and it came so quickly, and it hit us so hard in the Northeast that it seems to have abated a little bit, but everyone's being so cautious as we start our semesters, and it's a challenge for us all, and it's sorry to hear that it's hit finally in Honolulu, and hope that it abates quickly and that people get that under control.
Thank you. We're hoping. I think one of the beautiful things about Hawaii is we're uh, we're an island that's rooted in community, and our artistic community as well. Is we're just we value the safety of others and we value the safety of our students. So we know this is temporary, and we know we're holding on to the future and to the possibilities that can arise from here until this is all over and we can finally sing in person. And I can't wait for that day.
We're all with you there, and we wish
Right.
our friends across the Pacific all the best. So tell us about your individual journey as an artist and how you came to be a choral conductor, and give us the version of your career in life. Here we go.
Wow. Okay, here we go. So I grew up um, on a tiny harbor town on the Big Island called Hilo. And I grew up towards the uplands, so further away from the ocean, in a subdivision called Waikia. And I grew up just so entrenched in my culture as a Native Hawaiian cultural practitioner. My grandmother sang, my mother sang, my father sang, and we were just a household that was so rooted in song. And we were a family that, would just gather and sing and um, just would sit and watch and listen to music, because something that's so incredible about Hawaii is our so many of us, whether we're amateurs or professionals, there's no shame in communal music making. There's just so much music around and within these islands. So I grew up singing. And the first instrument that I picked up was the ukulele. And I grew up learning ukulele from my grandmother, and grew up singing and accompanying myself with my grandmother's luau show in a tiny hotel in Hilo. And that's kind of where I began to kind of think about what this could mean as a profession and as a career and as a responsibility to pass on my culture to other people, both visitors and to both locals alike. And once middle school arrived, I remember sitting in on Sunday Mass at St. Joseph Church in Hilo, and just being fascinated with the church choir there and the cantor that would open up every Mass and lead us in responsorial. And my brain finally started to open up the possibility of what it means to lead people through song. And very quickly, I began to branch or expand my musical training from Hawaiian music to music of the Western canon. I learned how to play piano and struggled with so many Bach inventions, and and was singing in a church choir and started singing at school, and started playing organ. And it was this meaningful multicultural um, education of indigenous music and Western music, and a lifetime of finding out where those connections lie and what they have to teach each other. During high school, my high school choral director, Michael Springer, one of the most important people in my life, gave me the opportunity to arrange choral music, to write choral music, to lead a choral ensemble, to learn how to conduct, to accompany a choir. And it was this passion once I finished high school that I knew that I wanted to pursue music. Didn't necessarily know what yet, still trying to find my voice. And then I went to the University of Hawaii, and I met two very important people in my life. One was a former guest on your show, Dr. Maya Hoover, who is a mentor, educator / turned colleague, and Larry Paxton, who is currently our department chair and is a tenor here he's our faculty tenor here at the University of Hawaii. And I relied so much on their mentorship, because at that point, I was struggling to think, am I going to pursue vocal performance? Am I going to pursue piano? Am I going to pursue something else entirely? Am I going to go into ethnomusicology and become a Hawaiian scholar? Or am I going to go and become a music educator? Until one day, I received a charge from an additional mentor at this time, Nola Nahulu, who's the director of the Hawaii Youth Opera Chorus, told me to intern with her and said that I should do this. I said that I should conduct and become a conductor and to establish community with other vocalists. And I had that exact same conversation with Maya and Larry. And, at a very young age at the undergraduate level, as you know, Jason, when we step into the space of thinking about what it means to be a conductor and undergoing this type of training, we don't really get that type of mentorship until our graduate work. And so I was given all of these opportunities to conduct with the Hawaii Opera Chorus, and the Hawaii Youth Opera Chorus, and the UH Chamber Singers, and was just given this incredible opportunity to try and to work at the undergraduate level. And that it was very clear at that moment that my training as a native Hawaiian musician, working and making connections with Western music, had a very clear transfer to the art of choral conducting.
It's a seamless transition, and
right.
You're lucky you had those mentors to guide you and to help you find those avenues. It's amazing. I tell my undergraduates that music career in music is a marathon, not a sprint, and that you have as broad a skill set as possible and keep engaging with music in many different ways, because you don't know where you're going to be in 10, 15 years. And it's a beautiful story.
Yeah. Yes, and it was you're totally right, and I was just one of the beautiful things here at the University of Hawaii, and just Hawaii in general, is we are able to foster such meaningful relationships and mentorship with everyone here in this community. And then I auditioned for master's programs throughout the country. And I had my heart set on the University of Oregon with the director of choral activities, who is still there, Dr. Sharon Paul. Now, Jason, you know me, I am just this bag of fireworks of extroversion. I love talking with people. I love just being around people, and people just can't shut me up sometimes. So
that's why I couldn't wait to get you on the show.
Right. So one thing that I loved when I was watching Dr. Sharon Paul work is her ability to connect with people through silence and through reverent discussion and through the state of calm, and the meaningful music that was made, and how very student-centered she is in her approach to conducting. And I sat there in awe, because she was rehearsing and had yet to utter a word, and just was speaking so much through gesture. And I grew up dancing hula. And I was flawed because I viewed that as, you know, nonverbal communication as dance and as indigenous practice. So I had my heart set on that. I spent 2 years with her and learned how to refine and control this unbridled joy and passion for music, and siphon it into a state of focus, and siphon it in ways that allows the student, the singer, the person that you are serving to experience. It became a communal event. And once that was done, I was working and had great experiences with the Oregon Bach Festival, really delved into early music, and was flabbergasted at the amount of connections Bach and Buxtehude and Pergolesi has to Native Hawaiian chant and all of this Native Hawaiian music. And then I went and did my doctorate with this incredible woman by the name of Karen Kennedy, spent 3 years in Miami, and found someone that was very much like me, very just out there, very extroverted and very larger than life. And she gave me such meaningful advice on how to navigate this career and how to speak and to work on behalf of our students and behalf of our craft. And was working with the Miami Music Festival, the Frost Opera Theater, and then started my career as a professor, entering into the world of academia, where I was the director of choral activities at Hamilton College, a small liberal arts college in upstate New York, and was the artistic director of the Syracuse Vocal Ensemble. And I loved my time there, loved those students, loved my community. It was my first New England encounter. Figured out how to live in snow for 8 months, nonstop snow. And at the end of that, my first year there, the position of director of choral activities at the University of Hawaii was vacant, and I felt that it was time for me to return home and offer all that I've learned back to this incredible place that has taught and offered me so much. So now I'm here working with these incredible undergraduate students and going to the beach when I'm not working.
What an incredible journey, and your journey has really just begun. You're young and exciting, and I was so lucky to have been on the island teaching at the University of Hawaii on a guest lecture on the invitation of Maya Hoover, and I was there, and when you were announced as the new director of choral activities, and the reaction from your students was so heartfelt. They were crying, they were so excited, and it was so clear that they had made the right choice, and I was honored to be there at that time, and it was really a special moment. And it's great to see that heartfelt community joy as they announced that you were taking over that position.
Blessed to be here, and we have such incredible students here. So thank you.
So describe your approach to creating community through music.
That's such a great question. My approach to community through music, the way I always start off is making sure that I operate from a place of knowing who's in front of me. Here at the University of Hawaii, we have such a diverse backgrounds here on our campus. So many students identify as Asian American, Native Hawaiian, a mixture of those two. We have a lot of multiracial, or Hapa students is what we call them, students from all over the country. And so one of the beautiful things that I love working in such a diverse environment is that everybody has something to teach and offer, and to help amplify the community. So my approach is always making sure that I embed time to know who my students are, to champion their strengths, to create safety with what they may feel uncomfortable about, and embedding that within our rehearsal process. And also figuring out, once I know who my students are and what they represent and what they value, um, how those how those identities can connect to the repertoire that we're programming. I was very fortunate growing up because I was able to make active connections from my indigenous and native background and my music making to the great canon of the Western choral arts. And I feel like, especially now, not a lot of us have that opportunity, especially working with such diverse populations. And one of the most important things that we can do when we foster community is making sure that when working with musics that are outside of our cultural purview, is that we see them as opportunities for connection as opposed to division.
So important to make those connections, and choral music is is such a great medium for understanding other cultures, like a doorway to the human culture. That we have such a responsibility through our art to do that.
Yeah, yes, and also the craft that we have here is rooted in text, and that's one of the biggest things that I always tell our students is that when we have the responsibility to facilitate text, we then have the responsibility to facilitate stories. And when we are responsible for our stories, for fostering and facilitating these stories, we have to regard who the storytellers are. So it's a very interesting way that we operate as choral conductors.
I was going through your bio, and I think your doctorate was it on the music of Queen Liliuokalani?
Yes, Queen Liliuokalani. It was a very incredible experience to, and I know a lot of us, when we're finishing our DMAs, a lot of us want to sometimes maintain a lot of distance away from that dissertation process, but it was a great opportunity for me to contribute that to our field, because nothing or very little has been written about the performance practice or the legacy of Hawaiian choral music. And a lot of it is because it has remained insular here in Hawaii. A lot of it is because Native Hawaiian choral conductors, the reality of pursuing the craft of conducting and going to graduate school and working in places of higher education, that was a reality that didn't exist for a long time. So Liliuokalani, and in my work with her, she's the last reigning queen of Hawaii before the Kingdom of Hawaii was annexed to the United States of America. So that's kind of how most people are introduced to her and what her legacy is. But not a lot of people know that she was an incredible composer. And I tell people that she's the Telemon of her time.
Wow.
Because she wrote so many works, both published and unpublished. And her responsibility in composing these works also led to a codified performance practice of what Hawaiian choral music sounds like, what it looks like, what our rituals are. And she basically took this Western arena of choral music, Native Hawaiian indigenous music making before Western contact, and created this beautiful communion together of intercultural exchange.
How do conductors engage with that repertoire? How do you recommend that we can start, like people like me, to start exploring her oeuvre?
So there's a book of her work called the Queen Song Book, and it is published by a group called Hui Hanai, HUI space HANAI. And it is basically a collection of all of her published works to date. And within these works, it's written in Western notation, a lot of it written in the style of hymnody, A lot of it is written in the style of parlor songs or art songs with little choral responses. And so it's very accessible for everyone. One thing that I tell to folks is that the performance practice of Hawaiian choral music is meant to serve the community. So while you may see, an Alberti accompaniment or just piano and music with chords, with cowboy chords interspersed, it is up to the conductor to figure out what they have and what is most accessible. So if it's SATB on the score and you have 3 sopranos, an alto, 5 basses, like a reality in which we all feel conductors, they have complete agency to reconfigure, to rearrange, to revoice, as long as they honor the text.
And what was the thrust of most of her texts? Did she say was there a common theme through a lot of her writing?
Great question. Her themes traverse throughout Hawaiian reality and also Western reality. So right at this time when she's composing, it's at the late 1800s into the early 1900s. And it's an incredible time because Hawaii is quickly becoming the center of the Pacific. We have delegates coming from Germany, bringing in the incredible waltz form. We have delegates coming in from the UK, which bring this regal nature of, choral music and Anglican choral music. And we have people coming in from all over Asia as well. So what she writes about is global in scope. Sometimes she'll write about the love of one's land, and we call that value aloha aina, and are certain to all of these songs leave room for so much metaphor, which we call kauna. So the whole purpose of kauna is to dig deep and to look in between the layers of rhetoric and syntax. So what may be a flower to a Western brain may also be considered as a person to an indigenous brain, right? What could be considered a walk through a forest to a Western brain, as you're reading it, could be considered as an emancipation of one's monarchy to another. And that's just the beauty of her work, is that it can be both simple and complex at the exact same time.
Oh, so powerful. That's what legacy has that left for composers in Hawaii today? Do we still feel her legacy today?
Oh, most definitely. Her works continue to be arranged, rearranged, rearticulated, composed for symphonies, composed for double choirs, what have you. But what she did is she opened up the realm of possibility for Native Hawaiian musicians. And what she modeled was the fact that your identity as a Native Hawaiian, your legacy of Hawaiian music before Western contact, is not meant to be limiting. In fact, because you are Native Hawaiian, because you're a Native Hawaiian musician, it is your job to interact with the global soundscape around you with and knowing who you are and where you come from.
Sage advice, and certainly I love that. I love how classical music is always enhanced when people bring their ethnicity into it. It's that's what makes interesting about Western music, is that it draws from other ethnicities, and it's you look at opera starting in Italy, then being exported to England, and then the English put their stamp on it, then the Germans put their stamp on it. It goes a different direction. The Russians, the same thing, and onward and onward. And there's this this expansion. Folk music of a people, or indigenous music of a people, is actually so powerful, and it has a way of enhancing when it comes into Western art music too.
Agreed. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we need to be mindful of. I always say that music can either divide us or connect us, right? And it's it's up to us as musicians, and we have the responsibility to make sure that when we make music, when we facilitate it, when we conduct it, when we teach it, all of those things, insert verb here with the noun music, we need to really be sure of our intentions, and we need to be really sure of how we're connecting to these other hemispheres of culture and sound. I think that is one of the most beautiful things about classical music is that when there's meaningful exchange, the possibilities are endless. But the same thing could be said too, is because classical music can also be a way to divide, right? And it's up to the person, it's up to the conductor, to the singer, to whoever that person may be, to meaningfully and responsibly engage.
So now tell me the growth of your professional choir. I was very fortunate when I was at Hawaii to hear your professional choir, and I took your CD home with me. I've listened to it many times since, and there's a real wide variety of music and styles on that recording, and it was really a pleasure. And tell me why you started that group and what your goals are. And I know that you were slated to have them perform at the national conference this year. Am I correct on that one?
Yes. Yes, you are.
Well,
yeah.
The next one, hopefully, it'll be
right. So the group is called Nav Chamber Choir, and the translation of Navai means the waters. And the reason why we were given that name from one of our elders is water has important symbology to the Native Hawaiian people. It can resemble life. It can resemble currency. It can resemble strength. When we say the word vai, what it could be is limitless. When we talk about a rich person, we say kanaka vai, or a person with a lot of water or resources. So the hope in giving us that name was that our name would be a piece of armor for all of us so that we can be resilient, continue to grow, and continue to innovate what it means as choral musicians. What we do in that ensemble is to preserve, propagate, and innovate Native Hawaiian choral music. Now, we don't just do Hawaiian choral music. We do music from all around the world. But one thing I love about you, Jason, is that we can talk about process all day long. So while the composer, the composition may not necessarily be Hawaiian, we try to ensure a process that speaks towards a Native Hawaiian reality. What does Mozart look like when facilitated in a Hawaiian perspective? What does the Pergolesi Stabat Mater mean when we collaborate a Hawaiian frame of mind with it? And so we've been in existence since 2009, and it has expanded in so many ways as our membership continues to grow as artists together. I started Nav Chamber Choir as when I was an undergraduate student at the University of Hawaii, and we've continued to meet and be together and grow in the pots that were planted in since then. And it has been so meaningful because we can trace an entire journey during those 10 years of schooling, of marriages, of children being born within our membership. And it's just this unique transition for us as we enter, or as we exit our 20s into our 30s, and just continue to make music together.
Beautiful. How many members are in the choir?
Yeah. We have 14 right now. We composed we just finished an album. We finished a conference, the Western ACDA conference in Salt Lake City. and we were recently notified of our acceptance to perform at the National ACDA convention. We'll see what happens. In terms, we know it's virtual, but we're trying to figure out what that means for us and what our contributions could be.
That's such an incredible accomplishment. Bravo! And I was so happy to hear that and to see that you're doing that, and what an incredible opportunity as a conductor and as someone who's founded his own group and gets to bring and tell your musical story to the world.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's been so great to see that our choral and classical community is so open and receptive to the narrative that we have to offer.
So tell me about the effect of COVID-19 on your upcoming school year. I know you and I both start our semesters on Monday, like a couple hours from now, and I'm just a little bit overwhelmed still. But I'm glad this show has got me a little chance to get out of my my syllabi and to get away and to talk to people who I really respect. So it's been a great to get set my mind to get ready for the semester. But how are you preparing for that, and what has that meant for you and your community?
It's great. So, I think a lot of us spent these past couple of months serving on COVID-19 response committees and on webinars and on all sorts of panels, learning about what all of the possibilities could be. But one of the biggest things that has stuck with me is that we, as a profession, need to be prepared to pivot at any possible second. And we need to be flexible.
The name of the game, the year of pivot.
Right. Right, the year of pivot. And I just can't imagine all of the memes that will come from this year about pivoting. So we were slated to, when things were a lot, when our COVID-19 rate was a lot lower, we were slated to rehearse in a face-to-face model outside, because Hawaii, we're uniquely positioned to rehearse outside for months at a time. Right.
Unlike Minnesota.
Right. So we were rehearsing outside, spaced 10 feet apart with masks on. And I had an amplification device. We had all sorts of masks at the ready. And I was excited to just make music in any sort of capacity. And I think our students and myself especially, we're all just hungry to be together, because so much of what we do in choir, especially as when we service what choir means in a higher education curriculum, is that we provide the intersection of what you're learning in oral skills, what you're learning in theory, what you're learning in your applied lessons, and what you're learning. We put it all together, right? And on Thursday, due to our recent spike, this past Thursday, so 2 days ago, we were notified that all of us needed to pivot to completely online learning, and they would revisit it later. And to that, we took the news in stride. We have an exciting semester planned. We will start to take a look and listen, and also sing songs about what we call pono kalike, which is justice for all. So we'll do a survey about, you guessed it, Queen Liliuokalani and her music specifically around the annexation to the United States, and the types of songs that were composed and sung at that time and what it meant to the Hawaiian people. We'll take a look, and we'll also sing about music that are tied to our country's reckoning on racial justice, and explore the narratives of the Black Lives Matter movement and compositions from Black composers, and our responsibility to those compositions and to those composers' legacies. And we'll also create all of a significant international transfer to looking at the music of Estonia and how this singing country used choral music to combat cultural genocide. And so I think this obviously is a very new environment for us as choral conductors. But what we can do, we can still teach students how to listen. We can still teach students how to be meaningful, meaningful protectors and meaningful facilitators of music. We can still sing online. It's just going to be in a different way. But how awesome it is that we can interact in a very meaningful way through transfers of music, of resilience into what is going on right now. And to know that if we continue to make music, regardless of the circumstance, if we continue to lean into each other and to lean into past narratives of music's composed during tough times, imagine what the possibilities could be as we move forward. So I'm messaging to my students that we have a great responsibility at this time.
We certainly do. We certainly do. And the paradox of this, the COVID-19 environment, is that as we're all sequestered and we're apart from each other, we need music more than ever because our hearts are hurt. It's the separation we all feel from this show. Every artist I've had on here is just can't wait to get back with our colleagues and to make music in person. But we have to find new ways to do that. And the technology does give us some advantages. I was talking about with someone else, and can you imagine 20 years ago if we had a similar outbreak, and what could we have done? The technology has given us, it's not perfect, certainly, and I think it's evolving, but it's certainly, we have ways to engage across safely engage, and that's what we have to explore.
Well said. And it also speaks to the fact that one of the biggest things that we can model is to be constant lifelong learners. And let me tell you, Jason, I've been doing nothing but learning how to do all of this behind a screen. And I know so many of us have too. So to all of us doing this behind a screen, learning how to interact with technology in very different ways, I see you and I applaud you, and we can do this.
Yeah, I'm pretty amazed with some of the innovations I've found from colleagues and what people are doing and how they're expanding their reach and how they're reaching across the screen to grab people's hearts, because we need it more than ever, and it's all about keeping our communities intact now.
Exactly. And, I'm grateful, just like how you said, I'm grateful that we have the means to do this.
Here we are, a world apart almost, and we're discussing a similar topic. I think it's powerful, and I can't wait to, I start on Monday, you start on Monday, is to start the process of moving those hearts and to getting our students a sense of normalcy, which I think we all need.
Absolutely. And I know we can do this, and I'm very excited to get started and to dig in.
We have our first question. This is from Eleanor from Chicago, and she asks, how do you approach music of cultures other than your own with your choirs? How do you approach that?
That's a great question, and one of my favorite questions to get. So I always start off with a place of reverence. And what that means is I actually insert another step into my score study. I'll obviously take a look at the language, do a poetic, see if there's a poetic or a word for word translation, do both, take a look at the harmonic structure, all of the things that we learn in our training, in our traditional training as musicians. But I also do an identity map. And so what that looks like is I will put out in circles on a piece of paper who I am as a Hawaiian, as an educator in Hawaii, as blank, insert identities here. And I will do the exact same thing for that composer and that composer's identities as well. And I'll see how they can create connection and the histories behind those connections, because storytelling is important. text is important, and it's important that we model that we're not just researching the artifact or the piece, but we're researching the story and the life, and how I can model connection to that life. I think it's important, especially during this time here in America, with everything that's going on, to put in that extra step, because students and singers will see that. And students and singers will be compelled to empathize with the music that they're studying in the exact same way. So that's something that I always make a point to do when I'm interacting with a piece outside of my cultural purview. And the thing is that the piece that you interact with, unless it's not composed by yourself, will always be outside of your cultural purview by the aspect of language spoken, socioeconomic status, gender. You know, we're talking so much more than just heritage, ethnicity, and nationality.
And you have to, in order to be an effective conductor, you got to put yourself, you have to know what was going on in the composer's life. You have to kind of see where they were as a person, and we always have to put a bit of ourselves into any music we make, and we have to kind of know what our parameters are. Otherwise, we're just, we're just creating in a vacuum.
Yes, empathy, Jason, empathy. And I think, when we think about the role as a conductor, it's so easy to glamorize what that role or identity is. But I see so much of what we do as a guardian of the composer's story, or a facilitator, a liaison, a connector. So much of it is, when it's done with empathy, is rooted in it with service and with the singer and the learner at heart.
Any good conductor is always a servant of the music, and we serve those composers, and it's our job to research them. And I think that researching the ethnicity and that's a wonderful lesson to any young people on this broadcast. Is any composer is a servant to the art form, and very well spoken. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
What words of advice do you have for young people just starting out in the music field today?
Okay. What I would offer is that we need to always know that we are constantly in a state of learning. Even when we're facilitating knowledge or quote unquote teaching, we're still learning. The process of music making is a constant back and forth means of communication. And so to always enter into a classroom or always enter into an environment of music making with a humble heart, a means for connection, and the fact that we will never know everything, because we'll always have something to learn, and somebody will always have something to teach us.
I always learn so much from my students. They always, that's what I love about my work, is that every time I pick up a new score, a new opera, or a new symphony, or a new choral piece, or a new composer I haven't been exposed to, it's like I've never done this before, and I have to start over again. I have to find, when you do let's say another Verdi score for me, I've done almost all of them now, so I know his parameters, I know what parts of his life he was written, but they're still their own little world. Every piece is its own world, and we never stop learning. That's what I find so exciting. Is 3 a.m. I'm studying a score, and I finally the light comes on. That's what he meant, and that's the fire, the energy, and that never ends for conductors. That's why when I'm hopefully 90 years old, I'm gonna still feel the same.
Right. Curiosity is a powerful thing.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jace Saplan, and I wish you absolutely all the best as you get ready for your upcoming semester and all the excitement that comes along with it. Welcome to all my friends over at the University of Hawaii. It was such a pleasure to meet so many of your students, and they really appreciate your work there, and it was just wonderful to be a part of your rehearsals. I got to watch 2 or 3 of your rehearsals, and the humility and the love that you approach your rehearsals with was truly heartwarming.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you for this time together, and just thank you for creating just an important space for all of us to move forward together.
Well,
it's been a
as
joy.
Artists, we learn so much from our colleagues, and I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule.
Great, and thank you. Aloha.
Thank you so much for joining us on Music Matters 2020. If you like the program you saw, remember to subscribe down below and hit the bell icon for the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests and topics. We have another show tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have internationally renowned bass Kevin Short, who just recently sang Porgy and Bess at the the role of Porgy and Bess at the Metropolitan Opera, and we're delighted that he's going to join us tomorrow. Please like our videos and share, and invite some of your colleagues to come in here and be a part of the conversation on Music Matters 2020, our unique video podcast. Thank you so much for being a part of us, and remember, keep music alive.